Well, to Belarus now, where tens of thousands of opponents of the President Alexander Lukashenko continue to protest against disputed elections. Anger is growing over alleged poll rigging and police violence. Belarus has been rocked by a week of street protests. Meanwhile, supporters of Lukashenko gathered in central Minsk for the first time since the election, they voicing their support as Lukashenko gave a fiery speech. He accused NATO of sending tanks and planes to the Belarusian border. Russia has agreed to offer security assistance to Belarus. Well, joining us now for more on this story is Julia Chapman. She is in Moscow, the Moscow Bureau, in fact, with the news agency FSN. So, Julia, tell us a bit more about the protests that we saw today. Again, two protests, one for each side of this argument.
It was a historic day in Belarus, a tale of two political rallies, one much bigger than the other, starting with that opposition protest. It was thought to be the biggest in Belarus's history. Upwards of 200,000 people are estimated to have been on the streets, calling for Alexander Lukashenko to resign, rejecting the result of the August 9th presidential vote and saying that that election needed to be rerun. There were huge numbers of people on the streets from all different walks of life, really calling for an end to the Lukashenko era. He has been ruling Belarus for 26 years. But he remains defiant. He also held a gathering of his supporters on the same streets of Minsk earlier in the day, and he said that he would not be stepping down. He said that the vote was legitimate, the result, which gave him some 80% of the votes. He said that that was a legitimate result. It was far too high to fabricate, so how could it possibly be incorrect? And he did claim that NATO was starting to build up troops on the Belarusian border. NATO has denied that, but that is something that we've been hearing from Lukashenko as he tried to rally support among his supporters in Minsk today.
Now, as you talk about the Belarusian president, he did reach out to Vladimir Putin today. What do we know about that call?
It was the second time that Alexander Lukashenko called Vladimir Putin this weekend. He seems to be increasingly concerned about maintaining control on the streets of Belarus and has been appealing to his neighbor to the east, Vladimir Putin, in the Kremlin. They have a strained relationship, although they are traditional allies. In the last couple of years, you could perhaps call it a marriage of convenience. And Alexander Lukashenko has been appealing for help from Russia. Now, the Kremlin says that it has offered support to Belarus in all the traditional forms and even under their military alliance. But there's been a muted response, really, from the Russian authorities towards Lukashenko. His position, it might be seen as untenable as more and more people gather on the streets of Minsk. It's possible that from the Kremlin, they're seeing the fact that Lukashenko might be struggling now in the face of opposition, and they may not be inclined to try to prop him up. So it's looking like an increasingly difficult relationship between the two countries, but Alexander Lukashenko does seem to be calling on support from Russia.
Julia, thank you for that. That's Julia Chapman, the FSN Bureau Chief in Moscow.